we had the French case of the rollout of smart grids. Now we will have the Indian perspectives as the last intervention of this session one with Gopal Saxena, director of BSES Rajdhani and BSES Yamuna in Delhi. So, Mr. Saxena, the floor is yours.
Just a brief background about myself. I work with BSES in Delhi. BSES supplies electricity to virtually 67% of Delhi. We have a consumer base of 5 million consumers. And along with Tata Power, I see Sanjay Banga is here from Tata Power. We actually supply electricity to the entire city of Delhi. We have also managed the Ethiopian electricity network in the period 2014 to 2016. Our network is one of the finest in terms of the private sector in India. We've been semi-smart.
Can you speak closer to the microphone, please?
It's not working properly. Pin mic needs to be. I hope I'm better audible. Thank you. Well, so this is just a brief background about BSES and Tata's, for instance. But first of all, let me extend a very warm welcome to the visiting dignitaries from France. India and France have shared a very strong business relationship for several years, and companies like ABB, GE, Schneider, EDF, etc. have been resident in India for a very strong presence and a long while, and participated in the building up of the energy sector in India. As I speak about the Indian perspective, Mr. Goswami has already talked about the fact that India is very well recognized in the world. We are the third largest generator of electricity. We have an installed capacity base of 335 gigawatts. Our grid is one of the largest in the world, which has carried about 170 gigawatts. And today, we are poised to transcend even higher levels of growth. And this gives us an opportunity to leapfrog and build in capabilities and competencies which will equip us better for the future. So it is in this backdrop that I am providing you a perspective on India, and not necessarily on what we've done in BSES or what we've done in Delhi. One of the biggest challenges in the energy sector in India is the distribution sector, which has been talked about. And the three main issues driving distribution sector in India are access, availability, and affordability. There are areas without electricity. There is electrified areas with new high connection dependency. There are unelectrified villages. On the other hand, where even it is electrified, there are problems of availability, daily load shedding, unplanned outages. And the biggest challenge is affordability, where the tariffs are not cost reflective, which places great strains on the distribution sector. So even by government standards, there are still about 42 million households which are going without electricity, some 260 million people. And about 800 million Indians use traditional fuels, with electricity being generated from gas or a diesel, which is a drain on the Indian exchequer. The power system in India is very complex. There are regulations, laws and policies in force with several institutions across the country governing several aspects. There is one system operator but there are several regional load dispatch centers, state load dispatch centers. Generation lies in independent power producers, central sector, independent power producers, state sectors. Transmission is centralized generally with power grid, but now independent players are coming in. Distribution, which is the last leg, an unfortunate part of the chain, is one which is the most stressed. If we look at the evolution of electricity in India and across the world for that region, electricity is just about 125, 130 years old. But with the spread and the convergence of media, internet, telecoms, and the growth in the aspirations of the people, electricity is very much an intrinsic part of our lives. And therefore, it is no wonder that the demands of inclusion in the Indian context are extremely high. Out of this 334 gigawatts of installed capacity, today roughly 60% is through 60 gigawatts is through renewables, and with the very aggressive stand taken by the government of India, we expect 175 gigawatts of renewable energy coming in by the year 2022. Now, that obviously has great challenges, but the other great challenge is the fact that private players now constitute an intrinsic part of the generation process, where earlier 10 years back virtually all generation was in the hands of the government, whether it was through the central sector or whether it was through the state sector. The other underlying feature of the distribution sector in India is that 90% of DISCOMs are with state governments, and these are high on losses. Average AT&C loss across India is 23.4% currently. They are high on costs, higher on tariffs and heavily subsidized, low on operational efficiency, network reliability, minimal adherence to SOPs, supply codes, 24/7 availability of power, lack innovation for customer convenience. Having said as much, for the French participants, challenges open up opportunities. Here is a great opportunity to interact with the various constituents in the power chain, in the energy chain, and to work out areas of interest and to be able to work in conjunction with these people to offer solutions. We've talked about smart grid, we've talked about nano grids, we've talked about distributed generation, we've talked about renewables, we've talked about solar. I think there is opportunity for each and every phase. The other feature about India is that despite being on a macro scale number 3 in the world, Indians per capita consumption is probably the lowest amongst all the developing regions. We have just 1100 kilowatt hours of per capita consumption, as opposed to EU, which itself is about 5400. So you can well imagine the potential there is to be able to participate in the growth of India's electricity sector. The challenges are many. There is structuring, functioning, accountability of ERCs. There is the Electricity Act. There is the cost reflective tariffs. There is smart grid and ancillary services, decentralized distributed generation. The idea is to look at how to bring about reforms aimed at improving accessibility, affordability, regulatory direction and intervention, and availability. One of the biggest challenges facing the Indian government is to get demand revival again, because already there are many stranded assets where the generation capacity exists, but there is no demand, and demand is not arising largely because of affordability constraints. So the government of India had implemented Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana in 2014, where there was expectation that the losses would be brought down and the state discoms would become cash surplus through improvement in operational efficiencies, financial management and turnaround. So that's lagging, and that one of the biggest requirements of the government of India is to get that back on track. The recent Pradhan Mantri Sahaj Bijli Ghar Yojana, the Saubhagya scheme, aims at providing electricity connection to 42 million households across India, and that itself is a significant challenge. And the final challenge is to discourage diesel genset, because India's balance of payments depends largely on oil imports. So demand revival is imperative to absorb the idling capacity and to avoid build-up of non-performing assets. In this scenario, we see a very complex future emerging, but yet a need for a network model. There is an integrated system of unique elements that are highly interrelated, notwithstanding the specific focus of these individual elements on their own. And particularly in the context of the renewables coming in, there is a need for non-traditional entrants to determine how they interact between incumbents and customers in a manner that does not island assets or diminish customer relationships. More the stakeholders, more the interconnections, greater the conflicts, and greater the opportunities to work constructively to resolve them. What do we envision as a smart grid for India? Improved demand forecasting and scheduling and cost management, outage prediction, management and faster restoration, effective consumer engagement. I am sure you would have heard about the fact that BSES just yesterday signed an MOU with Oracle for customer engagement and demand side services aimed at improving the consumers' interactions with the electricity companies. Substation automation system, better batteries and EV management. In this context, maybe there was a talk about how EESL, which I subscribe to, have put in street lights. EESL have recently consolidated requirement of a few utilities and floated a tender for 5 million GPRS based smart meters. The same has been done in Karnataka and I think one other state down south for a similar kind of value. And smart metering has become an imperative and a necessity based on regulatory directions given by various state regulators. Within Delhi, for instance, we have been operating semi-smart meters right from 2005 onwards. In fact, we have all the constituents of a smart network, SCADA, analytics, smart metering, download of meters, but the communication protocol was missing, and the idea is now to interface with a communication protocol and make them fully smart. In addition to whatever has been happening on the individual levels, there is a smart city mission by the government of India, which I am sure many of you would be aware of. There are 100 smart cities that have been designated. 1,000 crores fund is being set up for each city, and first fund disbursement period is from 2017 to 2022. Of these, about 2,900 projects have been identified. 148 projects have already been completed, and 31 cities have completed at least one project. The challenges are fundraising by local government bodies, resistance in project execution with citizens opposing the user charges. Affordability is one of the biggest issues with the Indian consumer. So there is also a tariff policy in place which pushes the use of smart meters. So what are the basic takeaways, if I may say so? The first is DISCOMs are still evolving. They are cash strapped and overburdened with legacy infrastructure, which requires a huge upgradation, and companies like ABB, Schneider and many others are participating in this progress and coordinating with various DISCOMs, as indeed they are with us in Delhi. Second, there is great need for infusion of leadership in technology, processes, artificial intelligence, digital information, which form the bedrock of a smart network and smart grid management, and to integrate these so as to rejuvenate and rebuild the archaic infrastructure. Having said as much, I would also like to comment that Indian utilities still need to explore the full potential of PLC, RF mesh, GPRS, because all this has grown largely, whatever smartness there is today has grown largely on the back of the telecom network. So earlier there was GSM, then GSM changed to CDMA, GPRS, 3G, 4G. We've still not utilized the full potential of PLC, we've still not utilized the full potential of RF mesh and many other competing such technologies, where one needs to see which is most appropriate for what purpose. And having said as much, I would like to just end by saying that the smart grid concept is still in its nascent form, and it provides opportunity for French companies, as indeed to companies across the world, to network with government agencies, utilities for evaluating and participating in smart metering infrastructure and network management. Thank you.